Jim Clarke, would you like to introduce our new member to the staff?
I'd like to introduce our new Codes Enforcement Officer, Sandy Stevens. And she's back here. She joins us today, and she brings some good value to the community. She comes with some good credentials and highly recommended. So I'd like to invite and encourage the board members and the mayor to introduce themselves and visit with her for a bit if you have the time, and share some ideas with her and what have you. So I'd like to welcome Sandy.
Would you like to come forward and meet the board?
Certainly. Good evening. Hi.
You're going to walk around and say hey or whatever you like.
I come from the city of Chula Vista, California. I am a certified building inspector, and I spent 4 years in municipal building inspection, commercial and residential. I also did about 3.5 years of code enforcement. And the latest was in abandoned property ordinance. We have a huge number of foreclosures, so I was on the abandoned property ordinance team dealing a lot with banks and absentee owners and things like that. I'm thrilled to finally come to a small town after being in California for quite a while. And I have relocated to Lexington, and I'm a big fan of old historic houses, so I'm very grateful to give the opportunity to serve the city of Odessa. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks.
In your packet, you have your crime summary. It says there's no crime in our city now. You've got that all cleaned up. And your EMS report. Old business. You want to have any old business? Yeah.
I've invited a couple of people here to explain the new ordinance or the new rules that the EPA is putting out and give you some information on what effects it's going to have on us. And the first one will be Floyd from NWA.
Floyd Gildo is here tonight to tell us that our rates are going to be up 50%, and I'm sure he's going to say that.
Mayor, I would never disagree with you, but it's good to be back here. Actually, I think this is my third time in Odessa in the last 12 months, but it's my first opportunity to get to meet with the board, and I'm pleased to do that. At your seats, you should find something that looks a little like this with my card clipped to it. And I'm not going to read this to you. The one thing I hate is people who come with presentations that they read to you. You're smart folks, and you can do that yourself. But I'm here tonight to talk about some new EPA rules that went into effect May the 3rd, 2010, that become effective and enforceable on May the 3rd, 2013. Now, government loves to use acronyms, and so we have something called NESHAP CI rights rules. Let me translate for you. That is the National Emission Standard for Hazardous Air Pollutants for compression ignition reciprocating internal combustion engines. And I cannot do that again. Essentially, this is sometimes referred to as a diesel rule, but it does encompass diesel engines because they are a compression ignition, but it encompasses any fuel if the engine operates on compression ignition. There's a lot of background material here, and I'd be happy to go over that with you individually, but I'd like you to go over to page number 3, if you would, to the bottom panel. This advance notice of proposed rulemaking was released back in January of 2008, so this is a rule that has been under review and activity. There's been considerable effort to get EPA to change this rule, and in fact it is better than it was. And for that you can be happy, but that's the last part of this you're going to be happy about. So you go to the next page, the current rule at top of page 4. I want to talk tonight about two kinds of engines, general use engines and emergency use engines. This is for your generation facility here. You've got three, correct me if I'm wrong, you've got 3 units, total of 5 megawatts. And essentially, if you go to the bottom panel, effective May the 3rd, 2013, the carbon monoxide emissions from those units have to be cut to 23 parts per million and/or a 70% reduction in carbon monoxide emissions. Frankly, you can't do that, I don't believe. And I'm going to have somebody here who can either confirm or deny that. I don't think you can do that without putting essentially a catalytic converter. You're very familiar with those in your cars. You're going to have those for your units. There may be some other systems out there. The only other one that I'm aware of is considerably more expensive. It will also require that you do constant monitoring of the emission parameters when those units are running. And I was going to check with HAP when I got here, and I forgot to do it, to see if you have a crankcase ventilation system on those units. Because if it doesn't, that has to be added as well. You'll go over to page number 5. Now we're dealing with a general use engine, and that's what you have now. You can run it whenever you need it. You can run it to provide power. For instance, when you lose power here in the community, you can run it when we need it to provide capacity to this city and other MOPEP cities. There are restrictions on diesel fuel. The systems will have to be certified initially in 2013, and then I doubt you're going to run it 8,700 hours a year, so you're going to have to do it every 3 years to certify. Records of maintenance and operation will have to be kept. Now, you can do this as a general purpose engine, or the other option is to classify these only as emergency use engines. Now, having worked in government for a long time, my first response was, well, what's an emergency? Because sometimes emergencies can mean different things to different people. EPA's laid out a very strict rule on that, and essentially it's when the power coming in to Odessa stops. Doesn't mean when you've got low voltage, doesn't mean when you've got inadequate supplies. It means the line is dead. If you have an emergency engine, there's only minimal maintenance and reporting requirements. You do have some limited ability to run it at times other than emergencies. It's limited to about 100 hours. That covers things like maintenance, reliability testing. There's also limited to like 15 hours that you can, as part of a formal demand response plan, under the control of a regional transmission organization, which is the step above MOPEP, you could run during that time. However, here's the difficult part. If you go to I always say the fun parts are the last pages. If you go to the last page, however, and I want to read this, it cannot be used for peak shaving or to generate income for a facility, to supply power to an electric grid, or otherwise supply power as part of a financial arrangement with another entity. In short, if it's emergency, it can only be used for emergencies. It can only provide power in emergency. It cannot be used for any other purpose. And here's the difficult part, and here's the challenging part, I should say. Emergency engines can't receive MOPEP capacity credits because they can't run and provide the capacity that we need for our system. I'm going to assume for a moment, and I'm not trying to insult your intelligence, but let me start with the basics. Capacity credits. Here in the United States, we require any energy entity to have approximately 15% reserve capacity. That's required under FERC rules, Federal